I think you might be muted.
Thank you so much.
There
Hello,
you
everybody. Sorry for the technical difficulties. Welcome to Product Manager HQ's resume workshop for PMs. I'm Julie Song, a community leader at PMHQ, and I'm your host. And today we're joined by our guest speaker, Juan Alberto Montoya, who's a Google recruiter. And we're going to look at 5 resumes today from members in the PMHQ community. Please hold your questions until the end. The Q&A session will follow. So go ahead, Juan. Tell us what you think about tell us about your experience, about yourself, and one fun fact.
Thank you guys for having me so much. First and foremost, this is super amazing. My name is Juan Montoya. I have been in recruiting for about 5 years. This is actually my second go around with Google. I worked at Google for 2 years as a contractor between like mid 2017 to mid 2019, and now I'm back with the same team that I was on back then. So it's been really great. A fun fact about me is I am born and raised in Lima, Peru. I moved to the US in 2004, and coincidentally, today just happens to be Peruvian Independence Day. So, to all of my Peruvians out there, big shout out.
We're going to go ahead and take a look at our resumes now. Now, a lot of our members want to know, how do you break into product management? So let's take a look
Mhm.
at first product manager or aspiring product manager resume. I've
Sure.
removed all the personal information. So
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. My apologies. Go ahead.
Oh, okay, no worries. So, when you're thinking about breaking, and this is the cool thing about this is it applies to a lot of any other industries or career changes. I don't think people can hear me, but
We're good now. Sorry, technical difficulties, everyone. Thank you for
we're getting some messages in the chat. Hold on, let me see if I put my earphones in. Let me see. Thank you guys for all letting me know. Oh, now we can. Hold on. Let's try this again. Can we all? Can you guys hear me? Can we get like a yes on the chat to make sure that you guys can hear me?
I think we do have a yes, we can hear you now.
Okay. Okay. Cool. I just wanted to make sure that everyone was. Ruby, I don't know. The last message says they can't, so we can hear you now. Okay, thank you, Corey. I appreciate it. Okay, cool. We're good. So the I guess the premise of this first round of resumes is more about what you can do in order to cater your resume if you're going to break into product management. So there's a few tips and bits about this that you can always sort of carry with you for whatever different career change that you want to think about, right? So I always try to tell people, think in a reverse engineering way, right? If you have an idea of the role that you're trying to eventually get, maybe not now, but maybe in like 5 years, a good way to go about thinking about your resume is try to emulate it backwards. So when you think about maybe looking up a job description for a product manager, let's just say for the sake of relevancy, like at Google, correct? And then you come across a product manager um, job description. It'll give you some details around like what they're looking for, right? So a mid-level product manager might ask for like 5 years of experience doing this, or 6 years of experience doing that, or certain skills and expertise or proficiencies in different, areas of the field or industry. So what you can do with that, and then starts tracing your steps in terms of like, okay, in order for me to get there in 5 years, what are some of the ways that I can position myself now to get roles that are going to get me started in the right direction? Another way that you can do that is through LinkedIn. And this is super easy to do. Is, for example, you search, I don't know, you search product manager at Microsoft, right? You should get a lot of different results of product managers that are currently at Microsoft. And what you can basically do is start studying the ways that these people sort of work their way up the ladder and became product managers, because that will give you a way clearer idea in terms of the different routes that you can take and what are the efficient ways that you can become a product manager. Obviously, it depends on the type of product manager you want to be, right? Like some people are a lot more technically heavy, some people are more like product based, some people are not technical at all. So the more clarity you have in sort of what your end or continuous goal is, the easier it will be for you to start really navigating the options that you should be looking at now in order to reach that 5 year, 10 year goal down the line. When you think about the ways that you sort of break into product management, right? There's different approaches. There's people that go the technically savvy way, right? There's a lot of like engineer based folks that begin on that front and then they make their way into product management. There's people that start maybe the marketing route, right? And they're like marketing specialist or product marketing analyst, and then they become product managers as well. So it's a lot of also searching for what your path is that's going to then allow you to then basically audit the way that you present yourself. But it all starts with just educating yourself around like what opportunities you have. So it's some homework that you have to do definitely at the beginning, but I think the more steam you get through the time that you use towards that, it'll allow you to be more subjective about the way that you present yourself. So it's definitely not a one size fits all, but it is something that you need to start really thinking about with a more purposeful sort of direction.
Absolutely, makes sense. So let's take this resume, for example, somebody who doesn't have experience.
Hmm.
This person has a PMHQ product manager certificate.
Hmm.
Take a look and give us your thoughts.
Yeah. So when you're first starting out, right, it's a little bit more difficult because you're almost trying to find the valuable things that you've done, even if you don't have too much experience, and try to highlight them in a way that they'll position you to look good for a potential product management relevant role. This will depend job description to job description. I highly recommend people to be very methodical and purposeful to the places and jobs that they apply to in order to then be able to sort of like moderate their own resumes. What's good about being early in your career is that you can draw from a lot of different things, but you're not going to know what's going to strike a chord until you know the types of skills that somebody is looking for, right? So different companies, different roles are going to look for different skills because product management in different companies are going to differ, right? What I like about this one is obviously this person is clearly personally motivated to be in product management, and that shows in the education and leadership experience. They have a lot of like relevant things that they sought out themselves. What I would say is be on the safer side of auditing your resume. If there is anything that is honestly just there in fluff, and I think we've all done this when we first start, we just want to make it seem like we are responsible for a lot of things and we have a lot of responsibilities that are, carry weight within us. A lot of the times we do that just to fluff up our resume when we're starting, just to make it seem like we're more than capable. I would say do it the other way and be a lot more intentional about the very, very certain things that are really going to affect your potential candidacy, right? What I would also say, let me see. So things like, right, when you're looking at senior consulting analyst, I think it's very good that they put responsible for developing and launching a new business, contributing to firm strategies. These are valuable things. If you're going to talk about your responsibilities, I would also suggest be succinct but very concise. Don't avoid open-ended definitions or phrases. So instead of telling me like, hey, I was responsible for um I don't know, team based progress and optimization, that's just very broad. So put some color around it, and the ways you can do that is you can use direct definitions, and you can use like statistics or any like data relevant sort of explanation. So instead of you telling me like, hey, I was responsible for leading team meetings, you can tell me like, hey, I was responsible for conducting reports to top level stakeholders where I would share the progress of our weekly goals in comparison to our weekly process. That tells me a lot more about your impact, and it tells me less just about some informational responsibility that you had. Um, that's what I would say in this case.
I have a question for you, Juan. I
Sure.
noticed that this resume has 2 pages. Can you speak to something about multiple pages?
Yeah, especially when you're starting, what you also want to think about is a lot of times recruiters or screeners, for whatever reason it may be, they're not going to have a lot of sit down time to be super thorough and detailed in reading your resumes, as much as it pains me to say. Like, for example, we receive hundreds and hundreds of resumes. So you almost need to play to the hand of the employer and assure that you are highlighting the things that are the most relevant with this role. So that's what I was kind of talking about. Like, be succinct. Don't worry about like fluffing things up. You want to be very, very purposeful about the things that you're putting in your resume. What you're going to want to do is make the lives of your potential employers easier by truly leaving stuff there that is going to be very, very, very intentional and relatable to the resume. I don't think people, especially starting early on, need to have a resume that's over 2 pages by any mean. I mean, a lot of even senior folks don't have that. So in this particular case, I would say try to make it. And the way that you can do that is if you go back to the first page, there's a lot of like the skills on the top that might be redundant with some of the things that you put in your responsibilities of the jobs. Find ways where you can tie those in, find ways where you don't have to necessarily repeat yourself, and you can probably save a good chunk of space.
Absolutely. Well said. Let's move on to the second resume. What are your
Okay.
thoughts? Mhm.
Yeah. So here's another thing. I think this one is also trying to break into product management. So right along the lines of like what I was talking about in the previous one, the intentionality behind it has to be when this resume gets to the desk of a screener, for example. As much as it might be great that you have a really extensive bandwidth of many different pockets of things that you've done or many different things that you've had experience in, if it's not ultimately going to be relevant to the role directly or the company directly, it's not necessarily going to fluctuate your relevancy to the role, right? So, for example, and the very last one in Apple, when you look at like the manager of shipping experience, like to you it might sound like it comes off as like, hey, I have experience in like delegating things and managing different things and being logistically savvy. um if it's not ultimately going to then relate and align back to the role that you're applying for, I don't think there's a need to keep that on here. So although I do think that there is a lot of rescuable things in what this person put in their resume, if it's not directly correlated to the role that you're going after, and relevant skills that are going to like show the proficiency that you could have in a role like that, then I would leave that out. But I do like the length of this resume. I think that's great. um, but I'll go back to saying what I said in the beginning, which I think is going to be a very important trend here, is always think about the continuous goals and roles that you want to achieve, because that's going to allow you to work backwards in terms of the ways that you're going to want to take steps towards that ultimately, right? So this person might not go directly for like a product manager um, role, because a lot of times like product managers are more established people within like the product or marketing or engineering team. So what are sort of the stepping stones to that might be available to you at a more entry level position, and strategize towards those.
Makes sense. Very informative. So, well, we can move on to maybe somebody now who has managed to secure a product manager internship. So, this
Mm-hmm.
resume, if you take a look,
Mm-hmm.
senior product manager internship.
Mm-hmm.
What's your take on this one?
So this obviously is a different tier. When you secure an internship, this is a huge advantage for sure, because they're definitely not easy. I mean, like I think the Google AMP program is one of the most sought after ones. So I know it's a tight race out there for sure. When you secure an internship, beyond what you put on your resume, your ability to go into that internship and be an absolute sponge and networking machine is gonna be what's gonna be the biggest differentiator for you, because once you've gotten your foot in the door and have a chance to really deal with the day-to-day activities, right, and have the exposure to how a team works, how a team operates, the different aspects of what make up a product management team, there's no time for you to hold back in trying to learn. So develop strong relationships. This is just like a professional sort of advice for everyone. Just a quick parenthesis, like develop very strong relationships when you can. Don't ever be scared to ask. Don't ever be scared to introduce yourself. Don't ever be scared to develop those relationships, because even if for whatever reason this internship doesn't turn into a full-time employment opportunity, people will remember you. If somebody moves on from that role to a different role, and then maybe later down the line, like their new company is looking for somebody in to come in, they'll remember you. So the most important thing about an internship is to absolutely no holds barred use it as the most precious networking opportunity that you have. For sure, become involved in everything that you can to that extent. With that said, the advantage that you'll have in securing an internship as well can also be used to dictate the way you're going to write your resume, because having a look from the inside outwardly, you're going to know what actual like skills and expertise and experiences are going to be the most valuable, right? Because for people that are just breaking into it, you might have an idea of what people are looking for in order to be a valuable asset to a product management team. When you're inside a product management team, you actually get that real life experience to seeing like, oh, okay, like people that have this experience, or people that have these skills, or people that have honed this aspect of their professionalism are the people that are thriving, are the people that hold the most weight, are the people that are, seeing a lot of success. And then use that to your advantage to then go back into your resume and ensure that you're listing those skills too as well. But again, the intentionality is everything, right? Like don't avoid the more vague definition of your responsibilities, and try to add as much color and context, because what that'll do is it will allow a potential employer to really paint a picture in their head of how impactful you were in that internship, right? So instead of saying something like was part of a product development team that launched a new line of XYZ, really talk about your own personal effect on it, right? So say like, I was responsible for working with a team of engineers and a team of marketing specialists in developing, you know, um, new features that led to, an increase in customer satisfaction, for example, right? That tells me so much more about your personal stake in the whole venture than saying like, hey, I was just a part of the team that was in charge of this, or the team that saw this come to fruition. Does that sort of make sense? Like you're really evolving the way that you're presenting yourself from information to impact, and that's what you really want to think about, because we can't tell on the paper the role that you played until you tell us directly. So you want to do all of that pre-homework. Obviously you'll be able to explain it a lot better and put a lot more context on it if you do get an interview, but you want to pique the interest of those people by truly putting your impact on the forefront. When
Juan,
you've done
if I could interject in regards
Sure.
to your impact, a lot of advice says to put numbers like I impacted customer service by this amount, or excuse me. So, for example, putting numbers on there like
Mhm,
customer engagement increased by 20%. Could you talk
mhm.
a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think that's super impactful, to be honest, because it puts a little bit more objectivity to it. Because when you leave numbers out, when you leave context out, it whoever's reading your resume can interpret it whichever way, right? Because you can say like, hey, we increased, for example, even saying like we increased customer satisfaction, that could be 1%, that could be 20%. You could call an increase something that's very, very fractional, or it could be something that's like an absolute marginal victory, right? So what numbers does, it takes subjectivity out of the question. When you tell me, hey, we over delivered by 23% of a goal, let's just say for like a sales role, let's just say I over delivered by 23% of $1 million sales, and then hit $1.23 million sales in year two. That is way more powerful than saying like, hey, I beat my year to year sales goals, even though that's great, right? But like numbers truly, truly put a lot more color into what your impact was, right? And leave no doubt in me or someone that's reading your resume any room to just like make my own assumptions as to what that means, right? Because you could have beat your goal by $1 and that's still beating your goal. But when you actually put the numbers on there, it takes me away from being able to make a judgment of it. Then it's just actual numbers that then I can sort of interpret in whatever way that I want. But it doesn't leave that room for ambiguity for me to figure that out, what that even means, or how that stands against what your goal initially was, or what the company goal was, whatever it may be. So I'm a big advocate on putting color on it. Obviously, not everyone's impact can be put into numbers, right? Like there's a lot of job responsibilities or things that you're in charge of that show up in different ways. But it's just a quick example of like the more you can speak on contextual impact, the better.
Awesome. Anything else that you'd like to critique from this resume?
Um. Well, so yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily think it's like a bad thing overall, but like for example, when you're talking about like your strengths or your technical skills, right? Like don't try to fill in spaces just because of like a template or a format of a resume. If your strengths aren't things that you've shown in um like the responsibility part of under like whenever you write under your titles what it is that you did, if I can infer that those strengths are things that you already have, I would say put them there. But a lot of the times, like it's almost infer, for example, like a stakeholder management and team spirit, for example, under strengths. That should be in all of your responsibilities in some sort of fashion when you write like, hey, I was in charge of presenting our weekly goals to our C-suite folks or our team of management or things like that, where I don't need to look at the strengths with just zero context and be like, oh, this guy or this girl has a stakeholder management and team spirit as a strength. I should be able to just deduct that from the way that you speak about your responsibilities and impact. So some of these things I think are a little bit cliche, or they're just more template based, where like you have a area of your strengths or you have an area of your technical skills. I think those are only really used when like maybe you want to double down on something, or when you want to be very specific about levels of proficiency, maybe, right? Like if you've been coding in Java for 20 years, right? Like you might want to double accent that to really just drive home the fact that you're very, very technically savvy. But if it's something like a technical skill, like it says like demo skills, for example, is that something that we could have just included contextually in the things that you've already written about the responsibilities you've had in other roles? Most likely, no one is going to look at this resume and be like, "Oh, let's pick this person because." And I don't want to be nitpicky or anything, but I know you asked me. So, if it says like innovative with entrepreneurial mindset, that's another subjective thing. Like to you, maybe you have that, right? But like maybe you don't have an entrepreneurial mindset in comparison to somebody else, right? So, um, be be again, I keep saying like intentional and purposeful, but keep those in mind when you're creating your resumes for sure.
Absolutely. Really, really good advice. Let's go ahead and move on to our resume number 4. And this person is actually an experienced product owner looking to transition into product management. And I
Mhm.
was able to get their intentions. So this person said, I would definitely love to transition into product management at a company somewhere within the software fintech industry.
Okay. Yeah. So when you're doing a little bit more of like call it a horizontal or lateral move, for example, something going from like a product owner to a product manager, you're gonna need to really like double down on your strengths and really try to find and tie in the similarities of the specific type of product manager that you want to become. For example, you're gonna have to leverage certain compromises. Remind me the industries that they want to get into. You said fintech or
Yeah,
software or
software.
software.
Yeah. Mhm.
Got it. Let me see. I'm not too familiar with Vitech systems. Let me look it up just to make sure. I'm not exactly sure. Oh, so it seems like Vitech Systems is a software company. So that's great. So they have a leg up on that because they're familiar with that type of industry. So in this case, it's all about playing like the apples to apples games, right? So when you're looking at a product manager in, say, a software industry, and again, it's hard to be super broad because I do think that product manager roles in different companies in different industries are very specific. But if you find something that you're after, it's going to be a matter of really leveraging how your own experience matches up with it. And if you truly have a strong case to be able to make a lateral move, a lot of the times when you don't come from, let's just say, like a truly parallel role, there's going to be compromises you might have to make. A lot of the times that's taking sort of like a down leveling position in order to eventually make that back up in the future, right? Like obviously we would all want to like either move horizontally or vertically at every point in our career. But again, if where you're at now is not necessarily going to put you in a position where you're going to hit the ceiling that you want to hit, and making a somewhat of a down leveling move to then repivot yourself into a position that is going to offer you way more of a beneficial long-term ceiling, then those are the things that you're going to want to think about, right? So when you think about coming to the table with, for example, like this resume, right? And as an associate product owner now, I think a total of, call it like about 2 years. If someone has also 2 years of experience, but they have a way more direct and relevant like product management type of experience, those people are probably going to be a little bit more better fit for that role directly that you're going for. So if you're not able to play to your strengths to the level that is going to put you up to par with those people, then at that point it's a matter of like repivoting and seeing what other opportunities you have. What I would say is, for just the sake of resume building, is drawing back from what we were just talking about. Play to the hand of your potential employer. Go read through those job descriptions. The things that I tell people to look at all the time are, one, obviously like minimum qualifications, right? You usually get like 4 or 5 bullet points that tell you like what you need at least to be considered, and make those like very profoundly clear in your resume. Again, make the job of who's potentially like evaluating your resume very easy. So if it says like, hey, you need 2 years of experience in doing this, or 3 years of experience dealing with that, or a degree in this, or a degree, it doesn't matter, whatever it is, make sure that somebody doesn't have to like scramble through your resume to make sure that like you have all of the things and tick off all of those minimum required boxes. Because when you look at minimum requirements, they're almost just like an automatic screening strategy for a lot of companies. I will say this on behalf of Google, I don't know if everybody else has this, we don't have like a software machine learning thing that scans your resumes. When you apply, and if a resume does get looked at, it's going to get looked at by a human being. So as human beings, like, we like to take shortcuts naturally and mentally, right? Like we like to be efficient with our work. So if to us in a matter of like 15 to 30 seconds it's unclear if you even have the minimum requirements, it's going to be hard for us to really start spending enough time to like really consider if we should move you forward or not, especially when it's such an impacted area group, right? So you got to put yourself in the shoes of people that are potentially going to be assessing your resume. You want to make the jobs a lot easier, a lot clearer, a lot more direct, right? So read through those minimum requirements that you have, minimum qualifications in whatever job description you're going after. Make those very clear. Then a lot of times in job descriptions, you'll have a section that will say like role responsibilities, or role description or whatever. Pay attention to that, because a lot of the times in those bullet points on the role responsibilities, or what may have you, they will detail the expectations of someone that's going to be successful in the role. So for example, if you have a product management job description, one of the role responsibilities might be work cross-functionally with engineering, or inbound and outbound product marketing and product engineering relevant teams, or across the EMEA and APAC regions. I don't know. Let's just make that our example. What you're gonna want to do with that information is also point out the ways that you've already done those things in previous experiences. So if it says work cross functionally with engineering and marketing teams to evolve products across different regions, you're gonna want to make sure that if you've done that, it is very thorough and front and center. So if this person, for example, at Vitech, they had done that, they would want to put in one of the first bullet points, like, hey, I was responsible for leading a adjacent team of engineers and marketing managers in launching the latest line of our XYZ product that hit the, Asia and European markets, right? What that is going to tell someone that's looking at your resume is that you've already been successful at doing the things that we're asking you to come in and be successful at, right?
Absolutely.
And that puts you in a position where you're already basically saying, like, hey, what you're asking of me to do here and be successful and bring to the table are things that I'm already familiar and successful with. So that's another sort of approach that you can take. And usually it's something that you take when you've had a lot more experience, right? Because then you can plug and play the things that you've done and really bring to the light things that are more like relevant. But in this particular case, this person probably would have the chance to do that. um
Absolutely.
George has a question, but we'll get to it at the very end. So yeah, if you guys have any questions, put them on the chat and we'll go through them at the very, very end.
So Juan, you are reading my mind. Like I don't have any questions for you. So happy to move on to the next one, resume number 5.
Sure, sure.
All right. So this one is an experienced product manager.
So yes, length is overwhelming for sure. For example, I do see some things that I do like, right? Like for example, in that first bullet point under product manager and new hall training, like they do have some percentages and numbers in there that do get some good context. The first things that I will be looking at are going to be your soft skills, right? You can take a big chunk of this from soft skills. Soft skills are things that you're going to have a chance to show through the interview process anyways. On paper, it's almost like we would be taking your word for it because there's no way for us to even have any relevancy in terms of like proving this stuff, right? If you say enthusiasm, for example, that doesn't necessarily do anything because there's just no context to that. It's not a tangible thing that we can measure. So if you have soft skills, I would say you can do away without those. Those are some of the things that you're going to want to bring when you come into an interview, because then they'll get to see like the real you and they'll get a good leverage of like who you are, how you carry yourself. I don't necessarily think a resume needs to have those. Now, when you're looking at the technical skills, for example, I know we just basically talked about this too as well. Like there's plenty of this that can either go into your responsibilities or it can be, left for later. Because I'm assuming that if you have over 5 years of product management experience, you have project management skills, right? It says on the technical skills on the third column, the first one, it says project management. That's almost a given. If you're going to be a successful, experienced product management, it goes hand in hand with having a certain proficiency in project management. So again, if it's a case of like wanting to showcase all of your skills, I would say quality over quantity is king when it comes to resumes. Be intentional, be purposeful. If you can say things in less words with the same amount of impact, by all means do it. So when you're looking at the actual bullet points under this person's experiences, I would say there's probably going to be a good amount of things here that you can combine into two, probably things that are a little bit redundant, things that are sort of like doubled up, things that you can maybe redefine, put some numbers into, and make more succinct. It doesn't necessarily diminish the amount of things they've done. It just allows you to speak strongly on your own behalf with less fluff. And that's what we ultimately want. because like when you think about things like teamed up with the project team to document requirement gathering and user stories, product backlogs, a lot of this stuff, it goes without saying when you're a product manager. Instead of telling me like what you were responsible for, like tell me where that ended you up, tell me how that impacted you, right? Like tell me about like sizes of teams, maybe tell me about like any interregional presence. Try to stay away from what I said is like just an informational dump. Do it
Mm.
more purposeful, do it more impactful. So yeah, this person could, I mean, if you said it's like almost 4 pages. I would say in this case, look, if you have good thorough experience that calls for like spilling into a second page, that's no problem. But you shouldn't be reaching like the three by any means a fourth page. Even if you have 20 or so years of experience, there should be no need for you to put that amount of content on there without being able to drive the point home in less than 2 pages.
And another, I want you to speak a little bit more about how wordy this resume is and also the different formats, because this looks like a little bit more traditional format.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, again, be succinct. Like I don't need long explanations of what you've done. Just be direct, right? I think a lot of people use ambiguity or like these different ways or roundabout ways to say that they did something because it's like, I don't know, it sounds maybe more eloquent or it sounds longer, so it adds a little bit of like a pizzazz to the way you're saying it. Don't need to waste your time with that. Direct and intentional is again quality over quantity. Like what you're able to get through to me is worth more than all of the things that you want to get through to me. So anytime that you can audit, revise your sentences, make them well more structured, way more concise, it's going to be better. The actual format of the resume, I don't necessarily think there's a better or a less good potential format or template. What I would say is there are templates that take away from your messaging. So I would say stay away from like trying to be over the top with it. I would prefer a way simpler resume and straightforward resume than a resume that has, all the bells and whistles and, it takes me to another link and it opens a new page, or it has like your name here, but your experience here, but like, a pie chart back here. If it's not a constructive, cohesive story that can drive home uh your what's the word I'm looking for, your potential, or your potential addition to the team or the role that you're applying for, there's no need. No one's ever grabbed a resume and said like, oh, but this is so different, we should hire this person. I know that we want to stand out and we want to be different. I think your ability to stand out and be different is going to be when you get to the point of like doing interviews and really sitting down and allowing yourself to shine through as a professional and a personable candidate. I'm telling you now, like, what you want to be very mindful of is, going back to what I was saying, is like, make it as relevant and direct and impactful to the role that you're applying for, and that's going to be your number one sort of target.
Great info. I'm learning so much, and it's just driving home like impactful, short, concise, succinct. So it's great. I don't have any more resumes for you to review. We can go ahead and open up to questions from the audience. So, Juan, do you want to go ahead and start with? Well, actually, why don't we start with me?
Let's do it.
So, I've seen a resume with a profile picture on there. What do you say, yay or nay?
No, I don't think there's a need to put like just like an actual document. Like, you don't mean like a LinkedIn profile. You mean like a actual, like a document, like actual resume document with someone's face on there.
Correct.
No, I don't. No, save your space. Move on from that. You can put like your location, but you don't need to put like your address or anything. I would say your LinkedIn page works, but just make sure it's up to date and it's thorough. And it's helpful. Like, avoid don't put stuff on there that isn't aiding to the strength of your resume, and your face on there is not gonna do anything at all. So yeah, I've seen a couple of those in my day. I don't it's yeah, there's nothing. No one's gonna reject you for putting your face on it, but there's just no absolute use or value for that at all. Yeah, no,
Got
not at
it.
all.
Got it.
Mhm.
We've got a question from the audience. So, any advice on reaching out to recruiters on LinkedIn?
Yeah, so I'll from my own personal experience, I'll say I get a ton of these. So if people aren't getting back to you, forgive them. Especially like in big tech companies, obviously a lot of people want some sort of advice or guidance. I try to get to a decent amount as I can, also because a lot of recruiters are specialized in certain product areas. So if your background doesn't match up to that recruiter's specialty, they might also just not be a relevant point of contact for you. For example, like I have some of my friends who are recruiters in like the global data center team. So if a software engineer reaches out for advice and indication of potential opportunities, they're not ultimately going to be the right person to talk to. So in terms of like advice on like how to actually message folks or anything, I think the more genuine you are, the better. Definitely don't make it a super generic. I mean, I know it's hard when you send in like mass messages, because I do it to potential candidates too as well. But finding a way to just get um finding a way to like make it personable, make it genuine. Don't have to fluff it up too much. I think something that reaches out from like just a genuine human sort of longing for connection and help and guidance is going to take you a long way. Piggybacking off of that and what I was talking about when we were talking about the first set of resumes, I know I was making a big point and driving home around like think about the role that you want to have in the future and work your way backwards from that. What can also really help, right? Like say you have in your mind the type of product manager you want to be, the type of industry you want to work in, the type of company even maybe that you want to work for. Do your due diligence with those things. Not only look at job descriptions to figure out like the best route to get to there in 5 or 6 or 10 years that it might be. Also, like I mentioned, you can search up people on LinkedIn that currently hold those positions. So if you want to look up technical program managers at Google or at Microsoft or at Amazon or at any other startup of your liking, on LinkedIn, you get a bunch of profiles for people that are currently holding those roles. And what you can do is compare and contrast the many ways that people have shaped their career to get to that point. What that will do is it'll take some of the ambiguity of your own path, because then you'll have ideas around like, okay, this person is a TPM now, but 6 years ago, um, 6 years ago they were a business product analyst or they were a customer success manager. Then you have an idea like, okay, if I want to get to where they are in 5 years, then I know that maybe taking a role now that is relative to what they had 5 years ago might put me in the right direction to get there. Right. So you're almost able to use the example of others in order to sort of create your own path. Obviously, there's no cookie cutter way of doing it, but that's an easy, simple way where you can start doing some information gathering. And then also, you might see some similarities, right? Like maybe you run into a few folks that work at like the big four tech companies, and they started their career with a certain type of like product management certification. Then you can know like, oh, I keep seeing the certification, it must be a good certification, let me go get it. Or hey, some of these people came from that same company, that company must have a good product management team, if these people are able to then jump into this next level. So those are the ways that you're going to want to think about it too, for sure. Okay, going on to the questions here. Anyways, George, I hope that answered your question. What I was gonna say too is reach out to those people. A lot of people, believe it or not, like are eager to and willing to help. Um, Especially if you are eager to break into their industry or their field. If they can be any sort of like mentor or advice guidance, They usually will. So send the same emails that you're sending to recruiters for more information to people whose jobs you want to have in 5 years, and then ask them like, hey, would you mind giving me a chat around how it is that you know, guided your career, or how you went about thinking the next moves that you had, or how it is. So yes, George, feliz 28. Next one was Sophie. Hi, thanks for this workshop. What do you think of format, basic versus super design? So we went over this really briefly, but I'll double down on this. No one is going to, if it doesn't ultimately act as a cohesive piece of really showcasing your value, then design is not going to put you above and beyond anybody else, right? Save the bells and whistles, save the bedazzling. Like, if it's just going to be different to be different, it's not, no one is going to necessarily reject it from like anger, like, oh my God, it's so different, get out of here. But if it can be simple, succinct, concise, impactful, that's going to beat any type of format that comes in. So worry more about the content first, feel good about that. And then if you want to, do anything that you feel like shows a little bit of flavor or personality or whatever, you may, but don't ever do it to the point where it's going to take away from someone being able to like deduct what you're good at and what you have experience in, and your potential addition or your successes. That comes second. The sign is going to come second. It's almost like you think about product management itself, right? Like, functionality, practicality is going to be your core value. So think about your resume in the same way. All of the aesthetic stuff is great, but if a product doesn't ultimately like do what you want it to do, it doesn't matter if it's the prettiest thing, the most bedazzled thing, the most flashy thing, right? Like, it's not going to get you anywhere. So your resume is that, it's a vessel for you to showcase your potential value. Whatever way you dress it up, that comes second to ensuring that like you're able to get that message across. So I hope that answers your question. LinkedIn user, we have an anonymous question here. LinkedIn user, they said, do you think certification in PM can help if you're coming from an engineering background? I do. I definitely don't think it can hurt, especially if you don't have enough exposure to it from an experience level. If you have a certification or any other educational piece that can aid, absolutely. Do I think experience ultimately can trump that? Yes, but say if you're in a very technically dense, strict engineering sort of background that you come from, I would say yes, absolutely look for other ways to supplement potential like product management alignment. I would say, like I was mentioning before, do your due diligence, figure out like what product management certificates a lot of people have that have put them in really good positions, right? Which ones are the most valuable, which ones are the most relevant. I definitely feel like that could help. So I hope that answers your question, LinkedIn user. Sophie, one more question. She's back. If I apply for a job at Google, what happens to my CV? ATS system that humanize, or no ATS, only humanize? Yes, touched on this basically. So if your resume gets looked at, it will be by a human being. The only chance that your resume has to not be looked at, the only chances where this happens is, imagine we open up a role and we get, I don't know, 200 applications in the first 8 days, right? It wouldn't make sense for us to go through all 200 because we would absolutely be bottlenecking our process, right? There's no need for us to put 40, like say 1 out of every 10 in 400 and 200 is great. If we put 20 people in the interview process at the same time, that is hecticness and like logistics and interview scheduling and time consumed and everything, when we only just want to fill one, right? There's no need for us to put 20 in there. So imagine out of those 200, we look at the first 50 and we feel really good about 7 of them. And we put those 7 into the process and we get the hire out of those 7. That also means, however, that after those 50, we didn't get to look at those 150. Doesn't mean that they go in the trash. No, we potentially consider them for other roles. But that's what I'm saying in terms of like those 50 get looked at by human eyes. So if your resume is considered, there's no machine learning system that is going to look for cues or words. It will be a human touch that's going to look at your resume. um Isa, is certificate matter when you see it on the resume? PM certificate. So I think LinkedIn user said this too as well. It's going to be contextual. If you have a non-PM background and you're trying to get maybe or break into PM, and you have maybe like either a outbound or out or inbound situation, like maybe you're very marketing focused or sales focused, and you've had a little bit of drizzled product management exposure and you want to solidify that, I would say yes, I do think a product management certificate matters, but it also depends like what roles you're going after. I would say someone that's trying to break into PM, it could help. If you want to go for like a certified mid-level PM, it might not be enough. You might need that experience. But if you're trying to make career switch into product management, I do think that a certificate helps, not only from the place of you'll have that exposure, but it'll show you have personal investment in your own development, right? In the side of product management. So yes, hope that helps. Ramia, what's an ideal scenario? 1-page resume or 2-page resume for 6-year experienced technical VA product owner? For 6 years, so it depends. This is going to depend a little bit on um, the amount of different roles you've had, right? Like if you've been in the same company for 6 years, I don't think that necessarily should be more than 1 page. You should be able to like break that down very evenly. For whatever reason, you've had like 5 different jobs in the last 6 years, and you truly feel like they all brought to the table something that's very relevant to the role that you're looking for, then I would have a lot of discretion about that. I don't think going over 1 page absolutely kills your chances. But again, going back to the put yourself in the shoes of someone that would review your resume, would that first page make a dense and strong enough impression for them to potentially even look at page number 2, right? And the way you do that is quality over quantity. So it might spill into 2 pages, but it almost should work as in like from the first page, they should know that you're a strong, relevant, well-aligned candidate. It shouldn't take them to take to page 2. Like, don't do your page 1 to where it's like, oh, I kind of still need to figure out more about this person. Make your page 1 with the purpose of having the impact that somebody could be able to tell yes or no, this person is probably like well aligned with the role that they're applying for. Ramia, hopefully that answers your question. LinkedIn user. I don't know if it's the same LinkedIn user as the other LinkedIn user or a new LinkedIn user, but I'm a finance program manager who collaborates a lot with partners to help bridge the gap between the business and tech. I have to say that I found this workshop. Oh, perfect. Oh, okay, never mind. I think that he was just saying that. Yes, I think that's great. So capitalize on using those examples of working cross-functionally with different teams to highlight relevant skills that you already have that might apply well to being a product manager. So it's almost like playing the apples to apples game that I was thinking about. Go to the job description, look at the role responsibilities. Maybe it says you'll be in charge of working cross-functionally with teams. Make sure that that comes through in your resume really well and strongly, because even if you don't have the title, you can still showcase for the fact that you have the skills and the abilities and the proficiencies that are going to help you. Corey, do you think LinkedIn profiles should read like resumes, or simply highlight a few responsibilities and impact that you prompt recruiters to ask for your resume? I think there's no harm in your LinkedIn profiles reading like resumes. What I will say is, to give you some insight about recruiting, when we do LinkedIn searches, they're going to be very much centered around, obviously, like Boolean searches, right? So like a lot of word matching, things like that. So be strategic in the way that you write the things in LinkedIn, in the way that you present it, in your verbiage, in skills or whatever it is that you want to add. Because when we're doing our searches, for example, like if I'm looking for a product manager and in my search I add like product management and engineering, and consumer, whatever, if it's like a consumer facing product or whatever. If you have those, if you would fall into that category, you want to make sure that like you're speaking on behalf of yourself, almost in like keywords, right? Like, and ensure that those keywords are in there. Be thorough. Don't be too vague to where it's hard to tell what you've done, but be mindful of like your approach, because you're going to think about wanting to be found out almost by a recruiter. And the best way to do that is almost think like verbiagely. I don't know if verbiagely is a word, but wordly strategic, right? So definitely enough to where you can get across your relevancy to the roles that you're after. Definitely use LinkedIn to the best of your ability, maximize it. There's a lot of set it and forget it things that you can do on LinkedIn, to where like if you do your LinkedIn well once and thoroughly and strategically, it can help you so much to have the right people sort of find you at times. So be mindful of that. Hopefully that helps, Corey. Sophie Ramia, thank you. Jason, thank you. Suhara, she said, is it possible to switch from business analyst to product management? I think it's possible to switch from any role to product management. You just have to be mindful of what those roads look like. I don't personally, off top of mind, can think of an example of a product manager that came from a business analyst role in the past, but I can almost guarantee you that there's someone that started as a business analyst and became product management with the right exposure and redirection, and strategy. So again, this is more about you tapping into your network, you doing your due diligence around getting familiar with the roadmaps there are to product management. If you've never had any sort of product management experience, it's almost like you're starting from scratch, which also gives you the ability to go about it in whatever way that works best for you. If there are other blueprints of business analysts that became product managers, you just need to figure out who those people are. And again, that goes back to like you putting in the time aside to do some research on your own, and you can do that through LinkedIn. I'm sure you can put a LinkedIn search and do like business analyst and product manager all in the same search bar, and then maybe somebody will pop up that's had those both two roles, and then you can probably find someone that's done it and just trace their steps back. It's like, make your lives easier. Look at the people that have done the things that you're trying to accomplish. um Engineer backwards, right? Think about your end goal and then retrace those steps, and then find yourself in where you're at in that process, and then act accordingly, make decisions accordingly, and I think you'll be fine.
All right. So we're coming to the end of our event, and I want to thank the audience members, and also thank you so much, Juan. Your advice and your critique it made our event golden, so solid. You can find Juan on LinkedIn and go ahead and give us a follow. Hit that bell, subscribe. We will have another event hopefully in the future. But again, Juan, thank you so much for your time. For everybody in the audience, if you have any more questions, definitely feel free to follow up. Thank you, everybody.
Absolutely. Thank you, Julie. Thank you guys so much. Everyone have a good weekend. Take care. Bye bye.